So, you want to make a Fanganronpa. At least, I assume you do if you clicked on this video. Or you're just here for my delightful presence. Either way, welcome. Since I completed my own Fangan last September, I wanted to make a series going through a sort of step-by-step process on how to make one. For me, the process of creating a project tends to go something like this. Have an idea. Plan the idea. Cry, sacrifice your sleep schedule, and make a blood pact with a demon. Profit! But in all seriousness, my goal with this is to help people new to, or in the process of, creating Fangans, to have some advice and a structure to go about it. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. I am in no way claiming to be a professional writer or editor or anything I talk about in this series. This is a hobby of mine, and while I have experience, not everything I advise will apply to every project. So take this all with a grain of salt, because my word is obviously not gospel. I hope it's more of a guiding hand to those who need it, because I want to see more Fangans actually succeed and come to fruition. So, without further ado, let's get started with the first episode of this series, the basics.
Danganronpa.
Let's begin by defining some basic terminology I'll be using in this video. A Fanganronpa is a play on the word Danganronpa, the name of a popular murder mystery visual novel. The name is a mashup of the word fan and Danganronpa, and is used to refer to Danganronpa games made by fans. Fangan is simply a shorter way to say Fanganronpa. Both terms refer to the same thing. Instaronpa refers to a specific kind of Fanganronpa. As the name implies, these Fangans are posted on Instagram in a slide-by-slide format. BDA is an acronym that stands for Body Discovery Announcement. As the name implies, these are moments in Fangans when the characters discover a body during the killing game. CG stands for computer graphic and is a unique, fully drawn image used during a specific scene. I'll be using these terms throughout the series, and they're commonly used in the Fanganronpa community as well, so I wanted to define them. With that out of the way, one of the first things you should decide is what kind of Fangan you're going to create. What I mean by this is that most Fangans fit into one of three categories: original cast Fangans, canon character Fangans, and crossover Fangans. Original cast Fangans follow the Danganronpa format, but feature a cast of completely original characters made specifically for the project. Canon character Fangans take existing Danganronpa characters and put them into a new killing game. And crossover Fangans take characters from existing media that is not Danganronpa and put them into a Danganronpa killing game. These Fangans can consist of a cast from just one franchise or a mashup of characters from several different series. Whichever you decide, you'll want to have that settled pretty early on into your project. Next, I'm going to discuss some of the most common formats people make their Fanganronpas in, and list examples you can check out, as well as the general pros and cons of each one. Some creators choose to keep the video game format of the original series. Notable examples are the Danganronpa Another duology, Danganronpa Lapse, and Project Eden's Garden. The pros of this method are that they offer the maximum interactivity with the project and can most closely match the spirit of the original games. They are also often regarded as impressive due to the amount of work they take to create. But that leads us into the cons. Fanganronpas are a lot of work in general, but making an entire video game is arguably the most work you can possibly do to make one. It requires several skill sets, such as art assets, programming knowledge, and more. You are also going to have to monitor the project more closely after release, because there might be bugs that need fixing in comparison to other formats, where you have a much more linear product. To summarize, video game Fangans are, in my opinion, the most work, but can lead to some of the highest rewards if they're actually made to completion. The next closest thing to making a video game is making a video series, such as Danganronpa F, Shattered Hope, or Danganronpa Despair Time. These videos are essentially made to mimic the experience of playing a game without actually programming one. They're usually made in video editors instead of coding software. The pros of this is that you get to enjoy most of the things that make a video game enjoyable, such as the moving elements, music, voice acting, and so on, without the effort of coding one. That said, these episodes are still a ton of work, and you do lose the interactivity that some people enjoy in video games. Insta-Rompas are a bit more challenging to describe. They're kind of like slideshows of screenshots of a mock-up game. Examples include Danganronpa Defiance, Rompa and Friends, and Total Rompa Island. You create slides and then post them in groups on the account. Most people also post videos for things like the BDAs or executions. These kinds of fangans are pretty easy to make from a technical level, because basically all you need to do is make a series of still images. They are great for beginners because of this, but are also versatile enough that you can still make a very impressive project. The downside is that you lose some aspects, like music and voice acting, as well as the dynamic moving parts of the UI that you often see in video series or games. Side note: I'm not sure if this is a pro or a con, so I'm just going to note it here. Insta-Rompas release content in very short bursts at a time. This means that it's much easier to upload consistently, sometimes even daily, but readers only get little bits of the story at a time. This means that they have time to comment and react to things without getting the entire scene at the time, compared to the video series or games that usually release much larger parts of the chapter at a time. It's really up to the author if this is a good or a bad thing for their story. Finally, I'd like to discuss written fangans. These are Fanganronpas that are simply written and posted, usually on Google Docs or a fanfiction website. An example of this would be Danganronpa 69 on Archive of Our Own. These fangans usually have very minimal visual elements, but sometimes will have CGs inserted, or links to videos for things like BDAs or executions. The biggest pro to a written fangan is that it is by far the easiest option and the least work. However, you are sacrificing a number of those visual elements, as I just stated. You can also use more than one of these formats. For example, Fanganronpa and Danganronpa Redemption post on Instagram as Insta-Rompas, but later compile all of those posts into a video series as the chapters are completed. These aren't the only possible formats to make a fangan, though. Don't be afraid to be more creative with it, such as making a comic, if you think it'll work best for you. Finally, I'd like to briefly go over softwares you need to make a fangan. This really depends on the kind of fangan you want to make, so I'll try and briefly cover the main ones. For a video game, you'll need a game engine to program it in. The most common ones I've seen used for fangans are Unity, RPG Maker, and Ren'Py. Unity and Ren'Py are free, while RPG Maker costs money. Video series will need video editing software. You can use any software that fits your needs, but I've heard that After Effects and Sony Vegas are very powerful, even if they aren't free. Insta-Rompas will need an image editor. There's literally hundreds of these, so find the one that works best for you. My personal recommendations are Photopea for desktop and IBIS Paint for mobile. But as I said, anything that works for you is just fine. Unless it's Canva. Don't use Canva. And for writing, you'll just need some kind of document software. I recommend Google Docs because it allows you to share your scripts with people, such as beta readers or other people on your team, but Word or any program like it will do just fine. If your fangan has visual elements, you'll need an art program to draw them. Again, just use whatever works for you or your artist. As for music, some fangans use the soundtrack from the actual games, while others are original. There's tons of music software out there to compose tracks with, so if you're planning on composing one yourself, do some research and find the one that you think would be best for you. I'll touch more on these visual aspects in another episode, but I just wanted to go over them briefly here. There is a big caveat to this entire section, and that's the fact that you don't have to spend money or have the highest tech software to make a good Fangan. Like I said, I'll go over presentation more in a later episode, but just know that you can still make a good-looking Fangan without shelling out hundreds of dollars on software if you don't want to. Heck, I used Photopea and Windows Movie Maker for most of my Fangan, and both of those are free. Next episode, we'll be planning your Fangan structure, including the type of Fangan you want to write, outlining, and planning the workload. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. The final episode of this series will go over some of those questions, and I'll do my best to answer them then. Remember to like the video and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in episode 2.